here. Are we good? Somebody from San Francisco confirm that you can hear me? Okay.
Join the line.
Kim Savage.
Hi, it's Kim Savage.
Has joined the conference.
Kim. Welcome. We're still waiting for the Los Angeles State Bar office to call, so you can stop on for a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Los Angeles State Bar office is here.
Los Angeles State Bar office is
Thank
here. This is Eric Iskin. I'm chairing the meeting today of the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission. It looks like we have San Francisco online. So what we'll do is start.
Yes.
I'll announce to everyone that we may have some concerns about a quorum, but let's just see if we do. Let's do roll call.
Oh boy.
Corey Friedman, Christian Schreiber, Banashe, Amin, Kim Bartleson, Pamela Bennett, Erica Connolly,
Here.
Louise Bayless Fightmaster, Herman Du Bois, Rebecca Delfino, Eric Iskin,
Here.
Parrish Knox, James Meeker, Bob Planthold,
Yes, here.
Richard Reines, Susan Ryan, Kim Savage,
Here.
Melanie Schneider,
Here.
Christina Vanarelli, Judge Jaskell,
Has joined the conference.
Who, please? Who joined just now, please?
Hi, who just joined?
I know if you remember the public, but
Justice
it
Murray,
could be the anonymous curmudgeon. That was one of
Justice,
mine.
Judge Siegelman, we're nowhere near quorum.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the big item today, the big voting item is whether we're going to approve the recommendations for eligible and ineligible applicants for IOLTA and EAF funding, and we need a quorum to do that, which we don't apparently have. So, I mean, should we just start going through the agenda and maybe hope somebody shows up? How many do we have?
9, and we need 13.
Oh, boy.
So we had 14, and then 2 people dropped out this past week. So we should have been at 13, and then someone just emailed 10 minutes ago saying that they had a conflict. So now we're below. And I had tried to email people to see if I could get people to come. And so I don't think we're going to be able to make quorum. So why don't you take care of business? And then, go ahead.
This is Jim Meeker. I'm on the phone, but I'm a member of the public.
Yes.
Thanks, Jim. Are there any other members of the public on the phone? Okay, so why don't we move into the public comments section. Jim, do you have any comments? Does anybody have any comments? Any members of the public have any comments they wish to make? Okay. And I guess...
Hi, this is Guillermo Mayer with Public Advocates. We had requested time for public comment, so we can withdraw that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so no public comment. I guess we need a quorum to approve the minutes of the July 19th.
Please speak up, Eric.
Well, I'm looking at the agenda, which is item 2, where we would seek approval of the minutes from the July 19th meeting. It looks like we don't have a quorum to do that.
Hi, this is Justice Murray. I'm having a hard time hearing Eric.
Okay, try to speak up. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
That's better for everybody, yeah.
Okay, great. So what I've told everybody is that...
Has joined the conference.
Who just joined? Can somebody...
Sorry, this Parrish I joined.
Okay. All right, Parrish, thank you. I think we're now up to 10. So Parrish and everyone, we have 10 folks present. We need 13 for a quorum. before we can do any voting items. So we'll just keep rolling.
Selena has joined the conference.
Did you get that, Helen? I wasn't.
It's Selena.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we roll through item 3 of the agenda and hope maybe some more folks join. So Chair's report we're going to skip. State Bar report on Board of Trustees. Helen, go ahead.
So there was a meeting with the Programs Committee, and with revised direction from the Office of General Counsel, they have approved the launch of the State Bar's Leadership Bank Program. And so as a review, this is to encourage our financial institutions that give us interest on their IOLTA accounts to opt into the established compliance rate, which is 68% of the federal fund rate. As you all may know, the federal fund rate went down from 2.5 to 2.25, and we've had several banks that have adjusted their rates accordingly. And the reason why this is so important is that once we have them at an established established compliance rate, when the federal funds move up and down, it'll move automatically as opposed to an individual review of all their bank products. And it'll give us an opportunity to market and highlight the banks that are partners for access to justice. And so we have staff that are working on the marketing materials, which would also be very specific of that this is not an endorsement, but that they have elected to elect at least the established compliance rate in order to raise additional funding for legal services. And so with that, I actually just wanted to take a moment. We have 2 new staff members that have joined the Office of Access and Inclusion, and so I wanted to take a moment for them to introduce themselves. Actually 3, well, quite frankly, yeah, 3. So I'm gonna have Erica Carroll from LA first introduce herself and a little bit about her background.
Hi everyone, I'm Erica Carroll. I'm a new senior program analyst with the Office of Access and Inclusion. I'm going to be based here in the LA office of the State Bar. And prior to coming to the State Bar, I was an attorney at a legal services organization for the past 5 years.
Christine, are you in San Francisco to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. I'm Christine Holmes, a senior program analyst here in San Francisco in the Office of Access and Inclusion. And prior to joining the State Bar, I was with Legal Services Corporation in the Office of Compliance and Enforcement. And prior to that, I was with the DC Bar Pro Bono Center.
And I realize that some of you have also been interacting with Crystal Bundag, who recently joined our office. Crystal, can you also introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Bundag. I'm a senior program analyst with the Office of Access and Inclusion. Although I'm new to the department, I think 3 months is my milestone. I've been with the State Bar for 5 years, working in the Office of Admissions.
So I wanted to let you know some of the new faces, the new voices you'll be seeing. The next item that'll be coming up for the Board of Trustees is the appointment of the chair and vice chair of the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission. And as you may know, I did email everyone to say if you're interested in applying for the chair or vice chair, to please submit your resume and a letter of interest to me. And I'm happy to report that Dewan Nguyen will be back from maternity leave in September. So I'm sure you'll all be happy to see her. She'll be returning part-time, primarily to manage the bank grants. And then she'll be back full-time in November. Yes, she had a beautiful, healthy baby girl. And so with that, that's my State Bar Board of Trustees update.
Sorry, my mic was off. Does that cover item D, the process for the LS?
That's not on there anymore.
TFC co-chair and chair?
Yep, that does.
You done with
Yep.
that? Okay, so Greg, you want to give us an update on the $20 million equal access funding for homeless prevention?
Sure, would be happy to. So about 2 weeks ago on August 7th, the Executive Committee of the Trust Fund Commission met via conference call to review the 64 applications that were submitted to seek funding from the $15 million first tranche of the Homelessness Prevention Fund. There were really 3 primary items for the Executive Committee to review. The first item was to review and approve the staff's recommendation for preliminary funding based on its review of all 64 applications. Ultimately, the Executive Committee voted to approve those recommendations. The second item before the Executive Committee was to review a matter of general eligibility for the actual homelessness prevention funding. As I think most of you know by now, one of the primary eligibility requirements was that the program must have been or had to have been a 2019 IOLTA grantee. And given where we are in the sort of annual cycle, a number of those 2019 grantees had been going through eligibility conferences for 2020 IOLTA funding. And the question before the Executive Committee was, if any of those programs were ultimately found to be ineligible for 2020 funding, would they or should they also be found ineligible for homelessness prevention funding? And ultimately, the Executive Committee concurred with the Office of General Counsel's finding that it's entirely consistent with the budget bill language that if an organization is found to be ineligible for 2020 IOLTA funding, that they should also be found ineligible for the homelessness prevention funding. So that was voted on and approved as well. The third and final issue before the Executive Committee was once again having to do with eligibility, but a little bit more specific to 2 programs. Staff had some questions about whether their proposed programs and services were in line or met the actual eligibility requirements specific to homelessness prevention. And there was a good discussion about both of those programs and their proposed services. And for one of the programs, which was LACPA, Council for Justice, the Executive Committee ultimately decided to decline or deny their request for funding. And for legal aid at work, the Executive Committee decided to grant their request for funding. So in terms of next steps, so on August 13th, about 10 days ago, staff submitted a request for funding to the Judicial Council so that they can go ahead and ultimately release the approximately $15 million in funding. I know that that's in process there, and we're waiting to hear the updates on that. The staff has also been working with the Office of General Counsel in putting together the final grantee agreements that all eligible programs will need to sign before any funds are dispersed to them. And following this meeting and early next week, we'll be sending out a budget template to all of the eligible programs where they'll be asked to document in detail how they plan on spending their allocated funds and sort of their schedule in terms of spending those funds down by the June 2021 deadline. And we're anticipating that we'll be giving them till September 20th to return those budgets to us. And then that'll give us hopefully about a week plus to work out sort of the logistical issues to ensure that the funds get dispersed by October 1, which is the current sort of timeline. And then finally, staff is also working on the final second and $5 million tranche of the funding, which will be dispersed on a competitive RFP process. We've already put together an initial draft of the RFP document. We're going through some edits of those now. We're also putting together a timeline, both of which will be presented to the Executive Committee on September 6th, which was just calendared a few days ago. So that's the latest.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Greg, and thanks for all your hard work on this.
Sure.
It's great. So I guess we've covered item D. Let's see, item D, is Catherine on the phone or here?
Yes, hi, my name is Catherine Margison, and I'm a program supervisor.
Yeah,
Can you speak up?
Yes. Can you hear me better if I talk at this volume? I feel like I'm speaking quite loudly, but okay, I'll keep it up this then. Well, thank you for the opportunity to report out here. I realized that last time.
Has joined the conference.
Last time we talked about
I'm sorry, Catherine, who just joined?
Fred Baylord.
Yeah, Fred Baylord.
All right, thank you.
Brazil.
Yeah, from Brazil. Welcome back, Fred. Thank you.
Oh, glad to be back.
So last time we talked about this justice gap study with the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission was back in November 2018. And so a lot has been happening over the last 10 months. So thank you for the opportunities to provide an update here. For those who may be new to hearing about this project, or just as a refresher, this justice gap study is tied to Goal 4, Objective E of the State Bar Strategic Plan. So I'm just going to really quickly read it. No later than December 31st, 2019, complete a California Justice Gap Study. The Justice Gap Study will be modeled on the 2017 Legal Services Corporation Justice Gap Study, but will also include an evaluation of the cost of legal education in California and the impact of those costs on the access to justice, as well as possible approaches to addressing the cost of legal education, including loan forgiveness programs or other means. So for that first half of the study, we have contracted with NORC to do a household survey. We are working on drafting the report with them that is coming out at the end of this month. We had over 3,750 respondents from Californias across the state trying to measure that unmet need. Over the course of this time, we've worked with NORC to supplement the sample with certain demographics like seniors, Spanish-speaking populations, so we can get more statistical significance to capture some of those populations. We also worked with Professor Meeker and NLRC to create a filter for urban versus rural based off of the MSSA data that Professor Meeker and the Rural Task Force are involved with. So we've been trying to just really get a strong sample. NLRC is working on that report right now. And at the same time, we're looking at the intake census data to write the analysis for the report on the field. So what the resources that are there, and for those individuals that do seek out legal help, how many of those are served, or what we're looking at in particularly unserved. And what's really developing right now is switching over to the evaluation on cost of legal education, in part, and the impact of those costs. So a large a portion of that study is measuring the unmet need, but this part of the evaluation is to look at what factors go into law students' career choices. Specifically, we're looking at the cost of legal education, but what we're also seeing are what are the other factors, salary, recruitment, to get to the supply of legal services. So how are we getting attorneys into civil legal aid versus the supply of civil legal services, and that gap compared to the demand for civil legal services. With the help of ORIA, the Office of Research and Institutional Accountability, and LAC, Selena, if you're on the line, please feel free to add anything here. We are gearing up to release a survey to law students on September 9th. Admissions will be sending it out, and the survey is trying to capture the questions around, law school debt and the impact of career choice for law students and like public interest drift and whatnot. So we started with the soft launch. LAC did a soft launch in July. We've been looking at those preliminary results. Those went to students that are interning at firms that have a strong pro bono element, or interns with legal aid programs. So I believe there was a little over 150 completed, right around there, 150 completed responses. From there, we've been working to revise the instrument for September, where we're going to release it to all students. And LAC has also done a couple focus groups that we're taking into account for putting out these questions to try to get cast a wider net there. And so the project continues to be very exciting. We're also looking at 2020, communications, how we can get the message out, circling back to some of the communities that we're not getting to, like the tribal communities with the Judicial Council as a potential next step. And yeah, I think I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or if or anyone else wants to update.
Thanks, Catherine.
Ren, I'm actually in your building and I'm headed upstairs. If you don't mind, I would love to give a little bit more info during my liaison report at the end of the meeting, because I do have more info on the focus groups.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that would be great if it's okay with the chair and everything. Thank you.
Any questions?
This is Jim Meeker. This is Jim Meeker. I'd like to know when a review draft will be available.
So that's an interesting question. That because parts are coming out in different points in time. So an opportunity to see a review draft of the NORC, like the household measure, the measuring the unmet need with the intake census and all of that. We're working on that report over the course of end of this month into September. And Professor Meeker, I know that you've been in contact directly with DAG. And so I encourage you to keep talking with him to see if you're interested in reviewing that, to put some, I think that would be I don't know if that's why you're asking, but if you're interested in reviewing a draft, I would encourage you to reach out to DAG.
Yeah, I'm asking.
Selena has left the conference.
I'm asking because Jack London contacted me earlier this week to see if I would review on behalf of the Access to Justice Commission.
Great, I have that down, Professor Meeker, so I'll circle back.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions to Catherine or comments? Okay, we're going to skip item F and let's sort of do a sort of quorum update here. Amin has just joined us, so we now have, unless anybody's dropped, we now have 11. We're getting there. Right?
Yes, and Rebecca Delfino will be joining us at 2, and I just sent an email to see if I could get the person that just dropped, if she could call in from 2 to 3. So
did the person, one of the commissioners drop?
Yes, 10 minutes ago.
Oh,
so I'm trying to see if I can get that, because then we will not have wasted your time this afternoon.
Yeah.
So if we can just move along maybe with some of the other updates and see if I can get a response back from the other commissioner, then we'll know. Otherwise, it may not be worth continuing on.
Right, okay. So let's continue on to item 5A, which is an update on the 2020 bank grants. That's Elizabeth.
So just as a reminder, we issued an RFP to distribute $6.5 million of the bank grant funds, specifically for foreclosure prevention and community redevelopment work. This RFP is requiring collaborations with at least one other organization besides the applicant. And we are also requiring statewide and regional focuses for these projects. The applications are due on September 13th at 5 p.m. And following that, we will be convening the Bank Grant Committee into working groups to review applications. And the Bank Grant Committee meetings will be on October 15th and November 22nd.
Okay, thank you. And why don't you update
Sure.
us on monitoring visit schedule for 2019? Sure.
I wanted to thank commissioners and our Board of Trustees liaisons again for their enthusiasm in signing up for monitoring visits since our last meeting. I really appreciate your responsiveness and enthusiasm. And so, so far we've conducted 23 visits for the year, and we have 12 remaining. I'll send out another email following this meeting for the balance of the year, and encourage you to also log into Smart Simple to sign up for visits. Thank you.
Question, are any of those in Southern California, those upcoming visits?
There are a few upcoming visits.
Has
in Southern
left the
California.
conference.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's talk.
So yeah.
I'm available.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. So let's continue treading water here, and we'll move on to the liaison reports, I guess. Is Bonnie on the phone? Judicial Council report on developments?
Yes, I guess the major have been working closely with State Bar staff on the additional funding for the $20 million. And the other, I think, big development that will probably impact, well, certainly impact a number of the programs funded through the Trust Fund Commission is that AB 330, which is a bill to add additional funding for Shriver Civil Council pilot projects, has passed the Assembly and Senate and is on the governor's desk, and we anticipate it will increase some fees on certain post-judgment motions, and we anticipate an increase of about $11 million in fees if that's passed. And so we will be issuing our Shriver grant applications this fall for grants starting next fall. And so we would be up to roughly $18 million in funding for the Shriver projects. And those are programs that are designed to equalize the playing field, so focusing on cases where one side is represented and the other isn't. In housing, in high conflict child custody cases, guardianship, conservatorship, domestic violence, and potentially civil harassment. So that will be, an interesting addition to our continuum of funding for legal services.
Okay, thanks, Bonnie. Comments, questions? Okay, so
I'll just add one other piece that may be of interest, because I was thinking part of the legislation requires that we do a report to the legislature and evaluation in June of 2020, and so that information will also be available, and that's often of help to legal services programs. And we're also conducting an evaluation of court-based self-help services and the cost effectiveness of those services. And that is due in November of 2020. And so I think those pieces together ideally will be helpful, certainly for partnership grants and other activities. And just as we're, looking toward those kinds of things, we're always hopeful that the community will be benefited by the work of evaluation and identification of best practices.
This is Bob Plainfield in San Francisco. If the governor signs this AB 330, when might the money be available? I didn't catch that.
Okay, so the bill would go into effect in January, so filing fees would start being collected
in January. Okay.
In January, and then it takes, I will say my experience is it takes
Understood.
to get that built up, right?
Got
and
it.
Everybody has to change their computer system and all that. So the good news is we'll have a better idea. Well, we're still going to have to make grants on projections, but we'll do our best to come up with a reasonable projection where we won't have to cut if all the money doesn't come in that we're projecting.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's move on to item 6B, Legal Aid Association of California report on program developments. Selena?
Perfect. So this is Selena Copeland. Thank you. This is Selena Copeland. And like Bonnie, I also have all good news. So I'm happy to be the time filler while we wait for the missing commissioner. So I have a few items that'll be pretty quick. One of them is related to funding. I think very soon a federal bipartisan bill will be introduced to increase legal services with a focus on eviction defense. I think it's really amazing. I think also what's interesting is that there's a geographic diversity component, and they call out rural eviction needs. We are following the bill, but of course I don't think it's been introduced yet, so I think it's just a really amazing opportunity. I think if it passes, because it's bipartisan, I hope it passes. I think it's just an amazing opportunity for the whole country to really increase their eviction defense and services to people to help them stay in their homes. This may be funding that I don't think the funding would go through this because it's largely focused on LSC funding, but I think this body would be interested in following the developments. So I hope to give you better updates soon. Another update, again, is related to funding. And I don't think anyone currently on the commission would remember, but back in 2012, you actually got some funds from the Attorney General's office to distribute based on a federal mortgage foreclosure settlement. This is prior to the bank grants that you currently distribute. The original pot was a much larger settlement of $25 billion. A piece of that was, of course, direct assistance to homeowners, and a piece of that was meant for services. California's share was $410 million, with an M, not a B. The Governor Brown and the legislature used it for short-term needs to backfill state budgets. I'm being polite. And after significant litigation, $331 million is getting returned to its original intent. There's a lot of news on this. It looks like probably what's going to happen is that the final decision on how to spend that $331 million will happen after stakeholder input. So I think that this commission should very much follow that, and State Bar staff should follow it, because we are the stakeholders. If we look at the needs of low-income Californians who lost their homes before or at risk of losing them now, y'all are very connected to these communities. And of course, I think State Bar staff will be very plugged in, but I hope to also give you updates when I hear things. The funding is going to be put in a trust, and then the decision will probably happen between now and the end of the budget process for next year. Yes, Bob.
This is Bob Planter in San Francisco. Two questions. First, on the bipartisan federal bill, do you know, is there any point where LSC or other groups start talking to the administration officials? Because two houses say yes, there's been some concern expressed within the administration about this type of funding overall. Do you know when they're going to start potentially talking to the administration? That's the first question. With regard to the $331 million, is there any way the state government in any form or level can file an appeal to stop, delay, cut back to 331? Or is it a done deal, it's coming back?
It's a done deal.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court has denied the request for review of the appeal.
Okay.
Yeah. And on the first question, which is actually pretty easy, LSC-funded programs are generally prohibited from getting involved in a lot of lobbying work at the federal level. Of course, the feds encourage them to lobby at the state level to increase their funding, but don't actually encourage them to do so at the federal level. But the organization, NLADA, National Legal Aid and Defenders Association, they're the leaders on this, and I really anticipate that they will help inform the community. I saw at least 20 organizations that are national organizations in support of the bill now. And I actually found out about it from friends in other government entities who are starting to line themselves up in support.
So LSC can't even send a, here's what's going to happen type memo?
I think LSC can, but not LSC-funded programs.
Okay.
Yeah, Bonnie's nodding her head.
Right.
She thinks yes, too. Yeah. So those are the money updates. A couple other updates I have, which I feel are all really happy and good. September 6th, the new California Lawyers Association, which is the new voluntary bar association, former State Bar sections, they and LAC, we are doing a convening on September 6th in San Francisco of access to justice leaders. State Bar staff, Judicial Council staff are invited and are serving as thought leaders, and California Commission on Access to Justice leadership will be there as well. The focus of this meeting, it's really a working meeting, and if anyone wants more info, just let me know. But we are going to be looking at the current challenges and opportunities at civil access to justice in California, and we want everybody in the room to be active and brainstorming and talking about solutions and seeing if people in the room want to agree to work on a particular solution. So, for example, we have a panel on rural access to justice challenges. LAC will be there to present data because we're the data people. But Gary Smith from Legal Services in Northern California and Eileen Jacobs from CRLA will be there to talk about the challenges that they see in their communities. And Eileen's going to focus on disaster, which she's been partnering, of course, with the State Bar on disasters in rural communities. So I think it's going to be a very exciting meeting. And the reason why I'm like honestly excited about this is that California Lawyers Association is a new entity, and they have funding for access to justice, and it feels like they are hungry for projects, and they are almost saying, okay, everyone who knows what to do, tell us what to do, tell us how to spend our money. Do we need to do fellowships? Do we need to focus on lobbying? They have a lobbyist already, so I'm excited because I think this is an amazing opportunity, and I'm happy that I hope a couple State Bar staff will be able to attend and also give information and see how we can work on this together. And my last quick update is just to follow up on what Ren was saying earlier about the Justice Gap Study and the focus on the law student pipeline to legal aid. I talked about this with Donna more than a year ago over a table at the State Bar, and I said, Donna, I really want to go back into the pipeline. I want to do focus groups or surveys of something of law students. And Donna said, Donna, if you're on the call, you can remember your exact words, but she said something like, I'm in, like, let's figure this out. This is really interesting. We can look at law student debt. And so LAC had the vision of going back to a law school pipeline specifically for our recruitment retention study, because we're trying to figure out how to recruit and retain legal aid attorneys. Donna's piece, what she was interested in is, like, what is going on with law school debt, and how is that impacting people's career choices, whether it's private firm, whether it's being a solo practitioner, whether it's government or academia. How does that make a change in your decision? And I am so happy to be working with the State Bar on this. Eli, who's over in Ohio, it's Ohio, right? Oriah, thank you. It's just so smart about how to ask the questions. And we did the soft launch just to see the feedback we got from students as they were going through it, and they suggested ways to change questions, which Eli's taking those into consideration. But even in the early data, we're seeing things like I feel like this is New York Times worthy, and in fact, we're going to get more data soon. But what we're seeing is that a person's raise actually has there's a correlation with how much law school debt they have, which is terrifying. But we have the data. It's a small N right now, but once we get larger data from the larger law student community, we'll be able to see. Right now, it looks like there's a much higher percentage of white students who have zero debt, and it's a much higher percentage of Latinx students who have the highest level of debt, and a much lower percentage who have no debt. So you can make all these stereotypes based on what you hear or what you read or what you know, but the data seems to show that that may be true. And we'll be able to use this with policymakers. We'll be able to use it with the federal government, with state government. I, of course, want a state loan repayment program with a focus on rural placements. So when I see the data we have already, which is a very small number of responses, I'm just really thrilled at the work that we're doing together. And the focus groups we've done already, we've had 49 students participate in the focus groups. And I think that we can only learn more with the more focus groups we do, which will be in September. So,
is there more than one site where you've done these focus groups?
Oh, yes, yes.
So it's not just concentrated in one area of the state?
Yeah, so to answer Bob's question, which he's like a gimme, he's like, Selena, tell me. Yes, we've done focus groups so far in San Francisco, Oakland, San Diego.
Has left the conference.
Oakland, Los Angeles, and one more location I can't remember. And then we'll be doing the remainders in other locations at law schools. I think we're planning on UC Irvine, San Diego, and San Joaquin College of the Law. We're trying to do a mix of urban and rural, but with the focus groups being at law schools to try to get the students who go to those law schools.
Well, and like for Los Angeles, how do people know about this? What schools are you?
Well, so the focus groups that we've done so far, we've done 3 in Los Angeles, and we've on students who are for the summer. Currently interning at a legal aid organization because we felt we wanted a high concentration of students who already have a touch to legal aid. That will not be the focus of the ones in September. September, we're going to general law school population, and Helen and I spoke with law school deans in June, maybe, or May. It was earlier this summer, and they very much agreed to having focus groups on their campus. So we've raised it with law school deans, and we'll be picking a few law schools with geographic diversity then. But we did 3 in Los Angeles already.
So this is Bob. Would you be doing something in Sacramento with McGeorge and UC Davis Law Schools?
Yeah, one or the other, yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm curious. I'm teaching
Yeah,
at
we're hoping
USC. Are you doing anything at USC?
We have not planned USC yet, but that's not to say that they're not on the list.
Just so
We've mostly been working.
We've asked LAC to have a variety of not only ABA schools, but also the registered and CALs, and also a mix of both urban and rural. And so with, I think, 38 law schools in California, I think I have immense faith in Selena and Zach and her team to find out a good diversity of students. The initial focus groups that she's run have been people who we already call inspired. They're moving into legal aid. That's their career choice. And so now as we move on to really learning more about the people who say that they go to law school in order to do public service and then they drift out, understanding what that looks like is really the next step in her focus groups in September. because that's who we're really interested in seeing in terms of what might change their behavior to either go into or stay in legal services and public interest, and or is it also, and I think it's a and.
Bill Murray back on the call.
Has joined the conference.
What can we do in order for law schools to inform law students about careers and practices in public service as well?
Okay, well,
Yeah, this is definitely one of my passion projects. I'm so interested in the data here. I want to write op-eds. I'm just excited because I think the state bar, is going to really be a leader in the country, and other state bars are going to want to copy this study.
It is fascinating data that we'll be sharing shortly. There's a lot that's been happening with the justice gap because there's so many different parts of it, and clearly one of the key questions is how does law school debt impact the justice gap? And so when we send out the survey, and part of this is why we are the Office of Access and Inclusion, we are going to be able to directly email, not directly, but through admissions, email every law student that has registered with the California State Bar. And that includes out-of-state schools. And so we're going to have incredibly robust data, and the data that we will have, I think, will really help inform recommendations for policy.
great. Oh.
I just had a quick question about that. Is it going to...
Who has a question here?
This is Bob Plantel, and this is a serious question, even though it's TMZ inspired. Have you thought of, is it possible to consider contacting Kim Kardashian and ask some of her and Kanye West's money to help with the idea that law students need help to go into public interest law? Because she's so interested in...
Yeah, alternative paths.
I'm just saying, is that a possibility that you can just throw out a letter? I know it's a Hail Mary.
I have not thought about that, but I would love to talk with Helen later because Kim has expressed an interest in the alternative paths, the legal education, because of the debt issue. So.
Okay.
So Bob, just so that you know, the State Bar's communication team has been sharing that Twitter feed about how people can practice law in California without having to go to law school. And I think, right.
We can talk to Lisa.
There have been very, I think, few, including Gary Blasey, who's a well-known legal services leader who didn't go to law school and now teaches at UCLA Law, because they tend to be unicorns. But with that, Bob, your point is well taken. But I'm sorry.
But for her to spend regular law students' debt to, it's not that they do their studies independently through a law firm. It's that this family of, greatly wealthy people fund ways for law students to have some of their debt relieved.
Like the Howard salutatorian who paid off everyone's tuition during his speech. Yes. I think everyone would love to have a statewide benefactor.
Well, I mean, it's some of the other daughters, sisters also are multimillionaires. One's a billionaire on cosmetics. The whole family could just shovel in tons of money.
This is Amin. I had a quick question about the study. Is this a survey that's going only to law students and not to practicing attorneys?
So for phase 1, we're looking at current law students. For phase 2, and what we're hoping to do in 2020 and beyond is to actually, survey like 0 to 5.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, the initial feedback has been, I'll go into public interest after I pay off my debt or after 0 to 5 years. And to see that, I think what we're mostly interested in, based on feedback from executive directors, that recruitment is lower and retention is really difficult, is looking at pipeline within law school first and then looking at 0 to 5.
Okay. I mean, my sense is that I imagine that the information that you'll get from people in that period of 0 to 5 and even beyond that will probably inform a lot of what you'll see. I mean, I think a lot of people in the room can attest to it. I think people who've gone through the experience of going through law school and then figuring out what to do afterwards are going to have a lot to say, maybe more than you'd find from students who haven't yet hit the market yet.
Well, I think that's what's interesting is that, right, if we're thinking that a loan repayment program will change behavior, but in fact it doesn't, then what's the purpose of investing in LRAP, right? So like right now, if it's also the fact that people don't understand how LRAP works and law schools don't necessarily can explain it well, that's part of the question. I think we're also using this in conjunction with LAC's recruitment and retention study, which is really about legal aid practitioners, why they leave, because the last data had shown that most people will go into government, and law students believe, and most people believe, public service is not only legal aid, civil rights legal aid, but also public government. And so what do we consider as public service?
And I would just suggest, I think the universe of folks who go into law school and are interested in doing legal aid work or legal public interest work, who end up in it, whether it's in government or in legal aid, it's a universe. I think there's a grander universe of people who wanted to do it and then ended up elsewhere and then got stuck for a long time or never made their way back. And I think that's a group of people that would be interesting to see why that was, if it's solely based on student debt or if there's other factors too.
Yes, and that's definitely what we've been asking. That's part of the consideration. And how also, as we think about the rich demographics of California, how pipeline of law students' debt impacts particular communities of color and rural areas, right? How that impacts the entire delivery of legal services.
This is Bob Planthold. I want to chime in again in the sense of the idea of contacting people out of law school newly working. For some years, there's been this program that supposedly would allow you to reduce part of your law school student debt by working in public interest firms or by working for a state or local government. At a recent meeting, we heard that 90% of those applying for that are getting rejected.
Higher.
Well, that's what I heard, 90%. And the point simply is that it's almost a program that's not working. And therefore, you're not going to get your law student debt reduced. And if you're working for $60,000 for some small city, town government, you're in debt till you're 55, potentially. And that's why here again, looking at what's the real experience of new practitioners may help inform seeking money or law students about where they go to work.
And Bob, we asked that question in both the survey to law students and the focus groups. But I didn't mention that as part of LAC's recruitment retention survey, which is just parallel to the State Bar's Justice Gap study. We've been working on this, and it just happened to coincide like very in time. The LAC's recruitment retention study, we've surveyed several hundred current legal aid attorneys, and also, I don't remember the number, but several dozen attorneys who recently left legal aid to get some of this information.
Okay.
So former legal aid attorneys, largely now at government.
It's personal to me because my older son went to Georgetown and now he works for the state of Illinois at a pittance. And it's like, I don't want to have to work here. Yes. Welcome to
And Bob, this is Catherine Borgeson again. I just some of the activities that we've been thinking about, like, because there's only so much we can do by December 31st, 2019. But then one of the things is to look at the law student survey and maybe augment it and work with like CYLA or our own State Bar reaches to get to former legal aid attorneys or attorneys that have switched or like to get that type of information, get out that information.
Please.
Thank you. Yeah. I just want to reiterate, I think this is national news. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Okay, so the
Sorry.
update is not good. We have Rebecca Delfino coming at 2, but I desperately emailed Christian and Corey to see if they got out of court early to see if they could go to San Francisco office, and I have not. Corey said she's in a hearing till 4. Christian hasn't responded, so I'm assuming that he's in trial. I emailed and I had one of our staff members call the person that said that they had another conflict to see if she could just call in from 2 to 3 so we would have quorum for that hour, and we have not heard a response. She got a voicemail. So in order to respect people's time, we may want to adjourn, but I do want to let you know what this impact is. We are on a pretty tight schedule in order to run distribution so that we can get checks out, not only for IOLTA and EAF, but for the homeless distribution. Like, we were on track to distribute this funding by mid-September for an October 1 date. And without quorum today, I think everything is going to be delayed by several weeks because, again, we have to have 10 days notice in order to have another meeting. But in order to expedite the conference call that then we'll have for this, we may want to just discuss all the items, and so that way at the conference call you can say that this was vetted and discussed with the majority of the members moving forward. But I would pose that to you guys.
All right, I think that's a good idea. So why don't we have that?
Sorry, this is Parrish. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. So I think for some of us, this could be our last technical meeting. So I don't know how that affects things or not.
Good point. When are you actually technically terming out?
Well, I thought today was our last official meeting, but I don't know what the actual official interim date. So maybe staff could help me.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not that clear. So technically, the new members start at the beginning of the September 19th and 20th Board of Trustees meeting. And then this term is up in September. So you're right, Parrish. This is your last meeting, and I believe Melanie Schneider's as well. And there was a portion of this we were going to recognize and thank you for your many years of service to the trust fund. And we're really leaving on a bad note. And so with that, let me ask Brady, do we have a specific date in which these terms, is it the end of August?
If there's time still left, just let me know. I'm happy to join a call to help push, so we can take votes on these.
Could we meet on the 12th of September before the Board of Trustees, and therefore before the new people come on? And I'm not wedded to that. I'm just saying something close to Board of Trustees, but before it, so that the people currently transitioning off are not out the door.
Yes, that would be.
This is Brady. I'm sure that whatever Board of Trustees agenda item, appointing each class of members would specify.
So it's usually the start of the September.
The start of the next one.
Yeah.
So if we have this next meeting
before that,
we should have those.
Yeah.
Approved.
So so our ideal timeline in order to have us to have 10 days posting would be the week of September 9th. And so that would be before the Board of Trustees meeting while you're still in office. So we'll squeeze the last week for a vote as well.
So we'll do some kind of a doodle poll or something like that?
Yes, or maybe after this I can just poll everyone here and save a lot of people time if we can get that together. Because I think it'll be hopefully like no more than 90 minutes, especially if we can discuss many of the items today.
So,
this is Justice Murray. I had a suggestion. Maybe it would be easier to get a quorum if we met at the end of the day, like 4:30 or something like that. I don't know how people feel about that, but if we're going to do a conference call, that might be a more opportune time than midday.
Whoever is talking, we can't hear you.
This is Debbie Manning. That's a good suggestion. The Board of Trustees, a lot of times when we have to have an emergency conference call, we'll do it at the end of the day. We'll do it like at 4 o'clock. So that is a good suggestion.
I'm guessing we could do this in a half an hour. Well, I think.
Can I just suggest that in any announcement to our current members, try to let them know we need to have this, because if it waits for the new people to come on, they've got to spend a whole lot of time getting acquainted with the history, looking over the minutes, looking over the memos. In other words, that could project it even longer. No offense to the new people, but they need to do their work. And it's easier if we keep our current body to make some sort of decision in September 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever. I'm just asking if
Justice Murray again. Maybe in your doodle poll put offer 2 time slot suggestions, usual midday and then later in the day.
Okay, we can do that.
This is Catherine, and I can be quiet if it's more like we can figure this out offline. I'm just thinking that we have communicated that we're releasing 2020 budgets on September 11th. And so we can't even run the allocation until this is approved. So I'm just putting it out there.
So if we met on the 9th, is that time?
We prefer more like a little bit more to run that allocation so we can make sure the numbers are correct.
Oh, boy.
But it would.
So Catherine, let's talk about this offline because again, we need 10 days to post. And so if you can just email me what the earliest day that we can meet with your 10-day posting deadlines, and then I will ask the group in this group, and then I'll ask Crystal at that point. So we'll see if we can get some hour sessions from 4:30 to 5:30 right after that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving along, do you want to discuss?
Why don't we go ahead, Elizabeth, just kind of review at a high level what the issues are, so at least those that are on the phone and here can know what they are.
Sure. So the Office of Access and Inclusion received 104 applications for IOLTA and EAF funding for the grant year 2020. We had 98 renewal applications and 6 new applications for funding. 82 applicants sought funding as legal services projects and 22 as support centers. 2 of the new applicants withdrew their applications. The Eligibility and Budget Review Committee met on July 19th and again this morning to discuss the applications and eligibility issues. After the July 19th meeting, there were several organizations where the committee wanted an opportunity to speak directly with the organizations. So we arranged several eligibility review conferences, and committee members and staff participated in those with those organizations. This morning at our meeting, the committee listened to public comment from several organizations that had a recommendation of ineligible for funding for grant year 2020. After quite a lengthy discussion, the committee ultimately voted to accept the staff recommendation that 5 organizations be found ineligible for 2020 funding, and that's Center for Healthcare Rights, Community Lawyers, Inc., Community Legal, Senior Citizens Legal Services, and Veterans Legal Institute. The committee also approved the staff recommendation to find the balance of the other organizations eligible for grant year 2020 funding.
This is Amin. Can I ask what the circumstances of the 2 programs who dropped out was?
They were first year funding applicants, and they just weren't they just didn't quite have all the qualifications necessary to qualify for the funding. So we believe they'll come back next year for funding and staff will provide them some additional technical assistance so that they'll be in the best shape possible.
Okay.
Any other questions for Elizabeth or comments? I mean, can I take the liberty of, we're not going to do a formal vote. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just get closer.
Get closer. So we're not going to take a formal vote today, but just so we can have some sense for how it's going to go when we actually do have the doodle poll meeting, is there any commissioner on the phone who feels that they have significant reservations about this, just so we can air it, if there are any reservations? Okay, hearing none. All right, well, anybody want to tap dance or sing or just do anything,
Move to adjourn.
Gymnastics. All right, move to adjourn. Any opposition?
Before you adjourn, can I make one comment?
Fred.
Hello?
That's Fred Taylor, right? Yeah?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
First of all, I apologize I'm no longer on the commission. I always enjoyed it, and it's great hearing some of the voices I heard today. Even though I'm in Brazil now, building out a new agricultural venture. But I want to thank you all for what you do, and let me pass one thing by you that we talked about the educational part of this, and as many of you know, I not only had served on the commission for a number of years, I've been very active with the old California Bar Foundation, which is now the Changed Lawyers. And, you know, we sponsor a number of underprivileged children that can go to major universities to get a law degree. And one of the things you might want to look at is some of the funds you give. Could you reach out and start working with Changed Lawyers to help them get more children into education in a way that we haven't done in the past? So just a thought, just passing it by. It's a great organization. I've had the opportunity for many, many years to be involved with that group as well. And going to the annual dinner and seeing the students that we give full 4-year scholarships to at major universities. Some of them go to Stanford, some of them go to UCLA, USC, Berkeley. Sitting with the parents and seeing their admiration for what we do that they could have never done for their children. So I just want to pass that by you. Is there a way that we could work with that foundation to help them a little bit more? So, guys, I all wish you the best.
Thank you, Fred.
Hold on, Fred, take care. Stay safe.
So I think there's two comments for that. One is, Fred was incredible with this office in terms of navigating the certification and guidance, and through his leadership at Presidio Bank by electing the established compliance rate. So I think that is well worthy of recognition and thanks. I also want to raise address what he raised, which is there a way to divert funds for other uses besides free legal services? All the IOLTA funds by statute have to go out for free legal services. The same thing with the equal access funding through Judicial Council. Now, however, during the recession in 2007 and 2012, this body, along with Legal Aid Association of California, created the Justice Gap Fund in order to really encourage more donations from Cypre awards, individual lawyers. And so right now, or historically, there has been a voluntary $40 opt-in to support the Justice Gap Fund. Now, that was when the distribution was about $10 million instead of $55 million. And the original legislation said that I think this body with external stakeholders and the Chief Justice could consider other means for Justice Gap funds. And so that could be something to consider, whether or not, if IOLTA is very high, whether or not the Justice Gap funds should or could be used for other specific areas where there may be other opportunities to address the Justice Gap. So for example, in Florida, their IOLTA program not only does scholarships, they do pilot projects, they do other technical assistance. They actually put their entire organizations on the same case management system, so they coordinate their entire pro bonos. Now they only have 6 organizations, but just to talk about what are other opportunities, I just want to also kind of say we are in a unique position of a lot of funding, and so are there other ways to think about Justice Gap Fund? And with that, I will let you know this past week, it's been a busy week for Cypre. We'll be getting about $250,000 in Cypre residuals to the Justice Gap Fund as well. So that activity is still robust. So up to date, the commissioner is going to try to call in from 2 to 3, so we may be able to make quorum today. So do you want to take a break for 50 minutes and come back at 2?
Are people able to do that? I mean, I am. We just took a break.
First off, if we've got like what, 11 now, and we need 13.
Well, so Rebecca's coming from Loyola Law School at 2 o'clock. She's teaching until, and then she's coming right over. Oh, yeah, she's calling. I'm sorry, she's calling at 2. She's teaching until 2, and she's calling in at 2 o'clock.
Can she vote?
And her location is noticed. And the other commissioner who couldn't call said that she will now try calling, and her location is noticed as well. So if it's possible.
This is Kim Savage. I mean, I would prefer to come back on it too and see if we can finish this off as opposed to staff having to go through all the trouble of doing another meeting, scheduling another meeting.
I think that's right.
50 minutes is like, your shrink's hour, so let's stay. Because otherwise, it pushes back the other financial information that needs to go out.
All right, so why don't we, unless somebody objects, why don't we recess until 2 o'clock?
Yes.
And we'll be back.
Thank you.
Jim Speaker
has left the conference.
I would like to
Has
thank
left the conference. The leader has disconnected. The conference will be terminated in 5 minutes.
I would like to thank you
Bill
all.
Murray back on the call.
Has left the conference.
Kim Savage.
Has left the conference.
Guillermo Mayer, Public Advocates.
Has left the conference.
Eric Iskin. Thanks everyone for hanging on here.
Right.
And,
Probably more
You know Corey, right?
Yeah.
for your issue if they would share it with their
guys are there
leasing
in San
teams.
Francisco?
But I think
Again,
most-
you're very low
most management
volume,
firms are
Eric.
All right,
professional
how
enough
about
that they would
how
keep
about
it to
this?
themselves.
Maybe
I know,
Better,
I'm
sir.
sure
Thank you.
most-
All right,
most
so
would
we're
as well.
back on, and Helen, why don't you do a roll call?
Yeah, I would completely agree.
Thank
I
you.
think
Corey,
At the end of the day, we're in
Christian,
the service business, right?
Bonachet,
It's
Amin,
about meeting the needs of our clients.
Kim Bartleson,
regardless of who might
Pamela
be
Bennett,
handling, that bucket of
Erica Connolly,
responsibility. So,
Here.
Louise
we work
Bayless
on numerous
Fightmaster.
assets where Seabury is the property manager.
Here.
Or doing the
Dr. Du Bois,
build out and project management.
Rebecca
or other
Delfino.
firms as well. So I think at the end of the day, it's,
Eric Iskin.
it's just about getting the job done and working
Parrish
well with
Knox.
everyone. But there absolutely is some
James
efficiencies
Meeker.
of scale, I would call it, by having somebody who's
Robert
across the
Planthold.
office, or
Yes, here.
is on a similar system. that
Susan
you're on,
Ryan.
where you've worked with
Kim
before.
Savage,
And I think we have some of the best people in the
Melanie
business.
Schneider.
So there definitely is some
Here.
benefits to having it.
Christina Venarelli.
Here.
Parrish.
Has joined the conference.
Parrish, I
This
just was
is
calling
probably
roll
not the
call.
right place to talk about this one. Because usually this
Okay,
one's
here.
the end.
Judge
But we
Daskell.
actually just wanted to talk about sort of why us.
Justice Murray.
And our sort of analyze experience in this sort of pocket of the South Financial District, the Space Street Corridor. Obviously, I've represented
Okay,
180 Howard
we
in the
have
past.
quorum.
123 Mission we've represented, 201 Mission, 301 Howard, 305 Howard and Hills Plaza.
Let's
we
move
really know
through the
what's going
business
on in
items
this little
then. Do
pocket
we have
here,
a motion
what
to
tenants
approve the action
look for,
summary
why they
from the
want to be
July
here,
19
what
meeting,
type of tenants
which I
as well.
believe
It's,
was attached?
you go 2 blocks that way, close to
Bob
Second Street.
Plano moves to
It's a whole
approve.
different
Great.
sort of
Melanie
tenant
Schneider,
roster than you
second.
get
Great.
over here. You get more professional services
Okay,
over
let's take
here.
a roll
Thank
call.
you.
Just
I mean,
because of the building types as well.
Kim.
So it really is that sort of
Pamela.
knowledge, knowledge base
Erica.
of what
Yes.
tenants are looking for here.
Uh,
And then we
Judge
also sort
Louise
of,
Bayless
Anna and I are not
Fightmaster.
strictly just agency
Yes.
representatives. We also
Dr.
do
Du
quite a lot
Bois.
of tenant
Yes.
work as well. So
Rebecca
we're constantly out
Delfino.
in the market. We know what all the buildings are doing.
Eric Iskin.
We know what people are quoting
Parrish
rates,
Knox.
what marketing, that
Yes.
they're doing. So I think that really gives us
Bob
a sort of,
Planthold.
a true grounding of what's,
Yes.
what's
Susan
going
Ryan.
on in San Francisco.
Kim
And,
Savage.
they want to sort of talk to
Has
you guys,
joined the
because I know you guys
conference.
do a lot of both tenant and
Sure.
Hi,
Yeah,
Kim.
you wanna talk about some of the listing
I will
fees?
Hi there.
add you on as in roll call. 1 second, please. So we were just taking the approval of the July 19th meeting, and your name was just up for the motion to approve
Maker.
the
Has
minutes.
joined the conference.
So you'll see some exciting stuff coming.
Is your vote yes to approve the minutes?
Oh, yes. There was somebody else was logging in at the same time,
Okay,
so
sorry.
yes.
Melanie
Yeah,
Schneider.
I reviewed them. Thank you.
Since '96, you remember when it was
Yes.
Capitol Grill? And then
Christina
Cosmos,
Benarelli?
which was like the spot to be.
Motion passes.
And that large retail space.
Good,
So
thank God.
when we originally
So
hired,
moving on to item
the team came in
4A,
and they said
before
we
the
have a
break,
10 to
we had a
12,000
discussion of
square
the
foot retail space, which is
eligibility and budget
pretty
committee's
unusual in San
recommendations
Francisco to
for
have something
those
that large of a
organizations that should be
footprint,
funded
and
for
there's a
IOLTA
number of
and
barriers
EAF
to
funding for grant
securing
year
a tenant for
2020.
that single size space.
So do we
So the
have
recommendation
any
there
further
was to break
discussion
it up,
on
and so
that?
that's what you see now, that's street facing between Pete's.
Do we have a
Summit
motion
Eats,
to approve
Pizza,
those recommendations?
Big Fish.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
just
But who's
people
coming
who are
in?
new
It's gonna be
be
really
told
cool.
which are
it's
yes
coming
and which
back.
are no.
Some over there a lot. I love you.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
we
so
could-
you
They're
guys
selling
are-
their
Well,
technology
not
to
which
a
are yes,
very
we could say
premium
which ones.
local chef actually. using
Anyway,
to do
why don't
something
we do
really
that?
Yeah.
Something similar?
Elizabeth, can you just
Yes, they're
briefly-
using the technology.
Okay.
It's gonna be
So
nice.
the
'Cause they're actually using kitchen
Eligibility and
back
Budget
there.
Review Committee is recommending
they're gonna use
that
the same
Center for
space?
They
Healthcare
are.
Rights,
Yeah,
Community
just
Lawyers
different-
Inc.,
different
Community
business.
Legal,
But I think your
Senior
question too is
Citizens
about the
Legal
remodel,
Services, and
and
Veterans
we've worked
Legal
with Hudson
Institute
Pacific
be
for
found
8 years.
ineligible for
Wincom
IOLTA and
One
EAF funding
finally,
for grant year 2020.
got the
They are also
approval to
recommending
spend the amount of
that the
capital
Commission
to do
approve
complete remodel
eligibility
refresh, which is
for the
actually an
remainder of
exciting
the
thing
applicants,
for
which are
the state
listed in
bar.
attachment C to the agenda
Yeah,
item.
for the bar and also for future tenants, and actually ties into the retail, but there's going to be much more amenities in that project.
Well, so let's do them as 2 separate votes. So first,
confidentially, we're
let's
talking
vote
to a
on
single
the
user
organizations that are
operates
ineligible for
kind of
IOLTA and EAF funding for 2020, and that is for Center for Healthcare Rights,
but obviously
Community
plays a role with
Lawyers,
very
Community
building,
Legal,
is very unique
Senior
and
Citizens
everything.
Legal Services,
So,
and Veterans Legal
that
Institute.
is going through planning right now, and they are fully committed.
Second.
Doing
Was
the
that
Google
Bob?
deal upstairs didn't hurt. I think
Yeah.
it freed up some
Okay.
capital.
I'm either moved or seconded, take your pick.
I took you as second.
do, and I don't know if this is off track
Okay.
where you guys are.
So Amin is a yes.
Yeah.
And Morrison's not here. Pamela Bennett?
Yeah.
Erica Connolly?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, and we.
Honorable
and a
Louise
couple
Bayless
of
Master?
Rays mentioned we've worked on 101 missions.
Yes.
all 123 missions.
Dr.
We're
Du Bois?
heavily involved with planning of the park.
I
that
think Rebecca
Jim
Delfino
mentioned,
still has not
and
joined.
activation of the
Eric
retail
Iskin?
space and on
Yes.
the ground floor of helping.
Parrish
with
Knox?
Design of what's best there, and also even kind of being ahead of the market with.
Susan Ryan?
That's one of the ones we can confidentially speak of.
Kim Savage?
Flower and Water has been a
Yes.
concept in the market. For
Melanie Schneider?
Fast casual, and before we even went to market,
Yeah.
had them interested in the space.
Christina
the access,
Venarelli?
The patio and stuff, so we're
Motion
very
passes.
familiar
And Bob
with
Plano,
sub-market. Their
yes.
feedback's
Oh, sorry, Bob.
Because
specific.
I had already put you on yes. Sorry, my
Sell
bad.
volumes for the restaurants to make that
Okay.
go through this area,
No,
and that
it could be part of a motion and still say no, so that's why I wanted to butt in and make sure we're.
I appreciate it, Bob. You always keep me in line.
love what's going
So
on
do
in
we
this
need to take
neighborhood,
the
from
vote
both like the
for the next
lunchtime
one?
traffic
Yes.
with the side eye and the
Yes.
combination of the residential close by that feeds into that.
So, yeah.
As we're going through roll
It's
call, if
pretty
you have
exciting
a
sub-market for,
applicant where you need to abstain,
for
please
retail.
indicate
Again,
through roll
East
call vote.
Cut, you guys have used that twice.
So,
What is
Yeah.
that?
So East Cut as they're defining its marketing ploy to rename this neighborhood. Well, it's on Google now, so it's official. It's on Google Maps. So it's roughly it's the
So moved
marketing
to approve the committee's
Howard
recommendation.
Street to Second Street and then down to Folsom.
Okay, so
It's really
Susan
South
is
Valley,
moved.
Rincon Hill,
Second is Bob.
is now what they're calling the East Cut. I think.
And kind of north. of,
Okay, taking roll call.
Yes.
Amin?
Yes, correct. So the big thing is now you have a neighborhood on Folsom Street, right? The Trans Bay redevelopment,
Okay.
all those lots that are now turned into
Pamela
residential
Bennett?
high-rises by Tishman Spire,
Erica
Elena,
Connolly?
Essex, Golub, blocks 6 through 9. Those are now, there's 6,000 new residents, right? So they have a neighborhood
can you come
group
back to
and they
me?
kind of
Sure.
Thank
they
you.
branded the East Cut. And they're actually a great, very involved
Judge
group.
Bayless
I gotta give it
Fast-
to them. They reach
Fight
out
Master?
about retailers and who's in the market and who's
Yes.
active and what's the feedback
Dr.
on the
Du Bois?
neighborhood, what can we do?
Yes.
So they've been quite
Eric
impressive.
Iskin?
Yes,
Um,
abstain on
But
page
stepping back a bit, I think when you look at retail in general,
Parrish Knox?
it is a very small
Yes.
part of the actual GLA, gross leasable area of the asset.
Kim
but
Savage?
It's becoming a much more important
Yes.
part.
Melanie Schneider?
Driven largely by
Yes.
what tenants on the office
Christina
side are
Venarelli?
looking for, right? Tenants now want more amenities. It's no longer okay.
And then
just
Bob
to
Plano
have
votes yes,
your
but
standard
abstained for
amenities.
Bay
Bob, I
Area.
did it to you again. I'm sorry, Bob.
Tenants
And then
downstairs
going back to
have
Erica
third-rate
Connolly.
coffee or boutique fitness.
I vote yes, but abstain for Bay Area legal aid.
Oh, yes,
there
sorry.
has been this push to, especially from tech tenants, to have a bit more of a refined retail mix.
Subway doesn't cut it anymore?
Hey, nothing
Oh,
wrong.
Susan. Yes,
What's
Susan.
interesting, right, is retail is now going through this sea change, as I'm sure you've all probably read, the retail apocalypse and all the challenges in retail. Urban retail is still a little bit different because really there's 3 buckets within urban retail.
Okay.
There's food and beverage, and then
Erica?
there is really service
No,
retail,
no, it's okay.
which you could put, fitness or dental or health and wellness. And then there's really financial services, which those are really the 3 big demand pools for office or for retail drivers. And people, office,
Yeah.
the office population always needs to eat, right?
So
And,
Erica
at least
Connolly?
They
Yeah,
still
abstain.
apparently need a bank, so and use banks.
Oh, okay, sorry. I
And
will
they're also
be
now more
abstaining from
working
advancing
out or
justice
using
Los
personal
Angeles, and
services.
yes for
So we're
everything else.
seeing
Thank you.
growth and demand within those 3 categories.
Yeah.
So really a question
Advancing Justice LA. Okay,
we ask
so the
from a
motion
retail leasing
passes.
perspective, which is part of the strategy we would get in with your team, is your focus here really
Thank you,
on
everyone, for your
amenities
flexibility this
and investing
afternoon.
in the space to
And
brand the building?
as
Or
we were
is it,
at a site visit
latter,
yesterday,
which
meeting
is
with
that's
board members
focused
and
on,
advisory board members
maybe
and
getting
pro bono
people's rent,
volunteers,
but focus on good
it
credit,
really
long-term
reminded me
stability,
how
kind of
all
those
of
things
you
that
in
really
this
matter,
room are
frankly,
doing this in your
in
free
market
time.
tenants.
taking
So,
vacation time,
that's part of the value that
working
we
late,
add,
or
with a team such as
spending
yours
your valuable
is
time with
understanding
us, and
what
how
your goals
appreciative
and
we
direction is
are
in your
for
strategy,
your
and then
service
targeting
and
a
your
leasing
thought
program
partnership.
based on that.
With that, we have
Some
two members who are
retail,
terming
leasing
off,
strategies,
Parrish
is what we call
Knox
the
and
shotgun
Melanie
approach, which is you
Schneider,
just put a sign
and
up,
I wanted to
you get a call from
express
somebody,
our
hey, we
incredible
have a warm
thanks
body, here's
for
an
all
interested
the
tenant. That's not really how we work.
innumerable
We
hours that
obviously
they
like to
have
come
spent
up with a
reviewing
strategy, that
applications, waiting in
strategy,
meetings,
and have
and
those
dealing with
tough
many
conversations up
emails
front.
and
And
more
some of those
meetings
tough
than probably
conversations are
most would have any
retailers are struggling.
desire to
Retailers
be
need
in.
more money now than
And
they
so with
have
that, I
because of
would like,
build-out.
on behalf of the Office of Access and
Minimum wage is
Inclusion
going
and the
up,
State
construction costs are
Bar,
going up,
but
so food and beverage
particularly
users are
the
struggling.
thousands of
how you
individuals
accommodate
served
those
by legal
needs is
services,
really
to say
going
thank you
to,
for your leadership
determine
and
how
your
much
time
demand
in
and how
order
successful you
to
are in your retail leasing. So,
ensure
what
that
we
people
can
have
offer
the
and what we
ability
like
to
to
access
focus on is,
our
one
legal
is
system.
information, right? So we have all the market comparables, sales volumes, every disclosure we get done. And then the second thing is really ideas based off of that.
And I just have
your
it really has been a pleasure to serve and to work with you all. And I hope that in my new role with the Judicial Council, I still get to come by and visit now and again.
The office group, there's
They're open
obviously a
meetings.
lot more
You can do what you
rents upstairs.
Kathleen
So
at home.
we work very closely with them. There are some officers who don't want to legalize the retail product
Okay.
to sell or showcase. Maybe it's a shorter term
Move
lease
to adjourn.
to accommodate them as well. So at the end of the day, it's a small piece, but it is the
Bob
face
is
of the
on the way.
product,
Thank you,
and
speaker.
it is
Has
something
left
that
the
is helping
conference.